All right, folks, it is my pleasure to be joined by my friend and yours, Adam Mockler, contributor to MeidasTouch, founder of Mockler Media, and rhetorical slayer of Scott Jennings on CNN. Man, he is kicking ass and taking names.
Thanks for having me on, man. We've been friends for a while now, for over a year, since both of us had way smaller channels. Since we were both optimistic, we thought Kamala would win.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
before Kamala was even in the race. But yeah, we've been friends for a while, so I'm glad that we're both still, killing it and in touch. It's been great.
No, dude, you've been skyrocketing. It's been awesome watching your success on Piers Morgan. The CNN hits have been awesome. I actually caught you on Botcha the other day. I'm not a big fan
Really?
of her. She drives me nuts. I think she's Botcha shit crazy, but you did really well on that show. What's that been like, man? You're here, you are, you got your start in alternative media. You're actually segueing also like to have a presence in mainstream media. What's that been like?
It's been cool. I really built it intentionally and it happened faster than I thought it would. But I started contracting with a PR firm about, I'd say, a year ago. And my first ever hit was on Newsmax. They got me on a little Newsmax hit. And it was Newsmax 2, actually. And I was debating another Gen Zer. His name is Brylan Hollyhand. And now he's
Oh,
like
we're gonna
blowing
talk
up in that
about him.
space.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're gonna talk
yeah, yeah,
about him.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. I debated this dude. It was my first ever TV. I was so nervous. I was sweating my ass off. I was like, oh, shit, I'm about to go on TV and debate somebody. And it ended up being like, intense. The moderators jumped in and 3v1'd me. I should make another video about that. And then I started doing a lot of reps on these TV hits, like over and over. I would go in, try to be a little bit combative, reps, reps, reps. And then finally I started to go a little bit more viral. And then Pierce Morgan finally happened. And then boom, it all lined up well. And now I think that I'm building a pretty good style. I'm developing a solid style, and I'm just appreciative of how it's lined up.
No, I think like you're occupying a really unique space here because again, I mean, usually it's the opposite, right? People start in mainstream media and then transition to alternative media. We saw that with all sorts of creators like Katie
Yeah.
Fang, for example, who I think has also joined Midas Touch as well.
Mhm.
You're doing the exact opposite while still not abandoning your alternative media roots. I mean, that's the primary heart of Mockler Media and Midas Touch. Are there two different disciplines involved? Like what is the what's the difference, I suppose, between you having a debate on alternative media or an interview on alternative media versus one on CNN when you're squaring up with Scott Jennings?
I think that is there a difference between the debates on the two?
Yeah, I mean, just like the style period, like what's it like? Like mentally, is it you have to tap into a different set of skills, different set of discipline? Do you have to put yourself in a different headspace, or are you
Yeah,
just
dude.
Adam as
So
Adam as Adam?
no, no, no. Basically, when I'm doing it's kind of hard to transition between the two. Like after doing a week of debates, I'm having trouble jumping back into the breaking news. Like I was telling you, like I'm trying to catch up on all that. But no, it's a lot of the same skills, talking about politics. But the prep for the TV stuff is just a bit more intense than the prep for these videos. So, for example, I just read a few articles. I caught up on the news of the week regarding the government shutdown. I went through the tweets of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, of all of the leaders of the Senate and the House, just to make sure I'm caught up on the news and Trump's takes. So I got to like casually go through with my morning cup of coffee. The CNN hits, it's like, okay, you have 4 hours, prep for it, get ready, make sure I have all the rebuttals and everything. So it's a little bit of a different game for sure.
Well, you've squared off with Jennings a couple of times now. The second one was really extraordinary. The first one was great. You had some great zingers there. I loved it. I loved how you brought up the Epstein portrait situation
Mm.
when they were discussing President Biden's auto pen portrait in Trump's White House. You mentioned I think at one point when he tried to talk about Biden pressuring Merrick Garland into prosecuting his political opponents. You're like, wait, so he was privately fuming publicly. I love how he was totally
Mm.
unprepared for you, and I that had to have felt good knowing that you've covered Jennings for years, and he's seen as this kind of like smug embodiment of MAGA on live TV. I think more so than even most Fox reporters, and you tripped him up just like in a really memorable viral way.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, without sounding arrogant and without being specific, there's a lot of times when I've turned on mainstream media, many channels, multiple channels, and I see pundits that are supposed to be representing our side, representing progressive values or more liberal values, and they're just, for the lack of a better word, like boring, or they're just milk toast, or they're representing it in like a boring way. It's like, can we get in there and do it in a ferocious way? And that's why I like the style of people in our space. I like your style. I like people who can do this in a captivating way. And I think that also being young adds to the fun of watching it all. So yeah, it's I just the goal is to, I guess, be captivating and to say this stuff in a way that really sticks, rather than making the same point that Democratic strategists have been making since 2003. You
Well,
know?
you've definitely been succeeding in that regard. And speaking of your youth, this is a good transition here because you made a great point in your conversation with Scott about the what I call an asymmetry of expectation, the double
Hmm.
standard that's imposed not just by the right against the left, but quite frankly against liberal and progressive commentators or liberal and progressive politicians, as opposed to the sitting president of the United States. And this is something that I bitch about all the time. And I'm curious if you would like to speak about what you said to Scott and the broader point you were trying to make about in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination and condemnation of political violence, why you feel you're being held to a higher standard than the president.
Yeah, it's not even that I made the point, it's that we got to see the point play out live on TV. You know, we got to see him say, "Won't you take responsibility?" When 2 seconds later, I was like, man, I just kind of think Trump, the president, should tone down the rhetoric. So you get to see him. You get to see that asymmetry of expectations, as you call it. And we've lived that for the past few weeks. So this is something that I've been talking about a lot. When Jesse Waters went on Fox News after Charlie Kirk was shot, and he was like, this is war. Like the Democrats are declaring war on us. This is now war. I made a video titled Fox Host Declares War on Democrats. And I was getting emails like, Mockler, that's a really divisive title that you used. And I was like, I'm using Jesse Waters' own words. Or when Donald Trump said that he was going to invade Chicago with the Department of War, and I said Trump threatens to invade Chicago, they were like, wow, how divisive of you to say that Trump's a bit authoritarian. And I'm like, but Trump's words are authoritarian. The same thing with the Stephen Miller thing. Newsom just called Stephen Miller a fascist, or the Newsom press account, rather. Stephen Miller then implied that that was a call to violence, and the Newsom press account said, no, we're literally just saying that you're a fascist. So here's the thing. Here's the asymmetry. They say something that pushes the envelope, that's unprecedented, that's absurd, that targets a minority group. We say, you are targeting a minority group. You are using your power to punch down and be kind of authoritarian. And they say, did you just use the word authoritarian? And they just get really pissed off. It's like we can't call it for what it is. And I think that we just need to, be punchy. We need to punch back. And I like the Destiny framework where he says that you can't, like, essentially we can't call for de-escalation until they do. Like it has to come from the president first.
No, 100%. I mean, this is it's textbook Republican strategy, especially in the age of Trump, where what they want to do is be able to dish out the most aggressive rhetoric possible, but not have to take even a fraction of it in turn. I've categorically rejected that. Destiny has, Kyle Kalinske has, so many people in the space. And, even on your own rhetorical journey, as somebody who's a friend of yours, I've even noticed this over time. I mean, you and Luke are some of the just most zen people in this space. You, over the past several months, you've maintained the zenness. Like, you're not frothing at the mouth in anger, but like you are becoming increasingly provocative in a way which I really like. Like, this is almost like Mockler ungloved. This is
Mm.
Mockler, off the chain. So is that a deliberate choice, or are you just getting fed up with the current state of affairs? Why are you more provocative now than you were in terms of making these really salient points?
I think that we can't let Republicans have a monopoly on this escalatory rhetoric at all times. We can't let Trump and then Stephen Miller and then everyone from the top down all using this escalatory rhetoric. And then every time we try to either match it or say something that we think, they freak the hell out. At some point, we have to match them, and they have to understand that when we get back into power, if we get back into power, hopefully, that
Fingers
we will
crossed, bro.
have, yeah, fingers crossed, that we will have leverage that we can use against them. That, I mean, what Destiny said was true. Republicans do need to be worried about what happens when Democrats get back into power. I don't think they should fear for their safety, but I think when they see the FCC being weaponized, Ted Cruz was like, hey, this is a slippery slope. When we see Comey being gone after Donald Trump asked Pam Binding to do that, that's a slippery slope as well. So Republicans need to understand that everything they're doing now can come back to bite them. I know they think Democrats already did this, but we can't let them have a monopoly on all of this. We need to match them, and then we can together tone it down. Or we just keep getting dogged on as Republicans escalate and Democrats are too scared to match the energy.
Well, listen, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here because this is something I used to say this to Destiny. I've said this to so many others as well, which is that if you're going to have a system of norms, by definition, it needs to be reciprocal, right? You can't have a situation like civility. Political
Hmm.
civility. I love the West Wing. It's one of my favorite shows. We don't live in the West Wing, and I wish we did, but that would require both Democrats and Republicans to engage in what I would call civil political rhetoric. And Donald Trump is the most uncivil and indecorous politician we've ever had. There is no counterpart to him in the Democratic Party, and so one-sided civility is no civility at all. And so I really appreciate seeing this more provocative turn where you're not going nearly as hard as they are. You're still not, saying the most unhinged shit that Stephen Miller has said and Laura Loomer or anything like that. But you're giving them a taste of their own medicine in terms of the mockery. You went on this spree, and I tried to contribute to the best of my ability, but you went on the spree a couple of weeks ago, just trolling one after another on Twitter, and I really appreciated that. I'm curious, as far as what you want to see out of the Democratic Party in the future, I've been really inspired by Governor Newsom's approach, and you mentioned the Newsom's press office. Have you been inspired by that? How well that they've done with respect to holding up a mirror to MAGA?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think it's twofold. They get the attention first by saying something wild, and they use that attention to then drive the narrative. They've done that over and over. It's something that Trump does as well. He gains attention by saying crazy stuff, but then that attention generally seeps into the mainstream with the more bogged down talking point. So it's important to get the attention, important to drive the narrative, and Newsom's proving it via the fact that what 5 or 10 minutes into our conversation, I mentioned Newsom and his press office, and we looped back around to him. He's clearly gaining the attention necessary by punching back. And like, it's not forced, it's necessary. He's filling a vacuum that no other politician seems to be filling, therefore, he's rising to the top. So I really am inspired by the way he's been punching back. And in a roundabout way, it gives me some, confidence that I can push a little bit farther, be a little bit more edgy, and I'll have the Democratic leadership at my back still like, hey, we're not going to expel you or purity test you if you say some edgy stuff.
Right, like it's almost like a positive reinforcement loop. This idea that it
Hmm.
actually encourages both other politicians and political commentators to step up in that way too. You made I mentioned at the very beginning, and I thought it was hilarious. It's one of the best comments I've heard from a commentator in recent memory, which is you joke that in response to Donald Trump putting up the presidential portrait of President Biden, but trolling him in the form of an auto pen, and by the way, making it like it's the biggest fucking deal in the universe because that's all Trump
Hmm.
can do, right? You point to substantive policies like, hey, look at this like other thing that we trolled on. One of the comments you made was, that's cool. I think this sets a precedent. The only Democrat I will vote for is a man who replaces or someone who replaces all of Trump's presidential portraits everywhere with various pictures of him and Epstein. Now, that was a great line. I love that line.
Hmm.
As far as that embodying the attitude, how much of that do you want to be the posture and the swagger of the next Democratic candidate? Because I'll be honest with you, I want that 100%. That to me is a deal breaker. Like, I love Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. It's my former governor. I don't know if I would support him as the Democratic nominee in the primary because he's like the Mr. Rogers of politics. He's such a nice guy. Maybe I'd want that as my vice president, but I feel like we need somebody who's going to take a bit of the Trump playbook and flip it on the GOP. What do you think?
Yeah, we definitely need it right now, but it's hard to tell where we're going to be in 3 years, to be honest. We don't know if in 3 years this resistance, liberalism, Newsom strain will be what's needed, or maybe the economy is so deep in the shitter. Maybe some new event happens and the economy is so wrecked that we need some gentle economic populism that the general public really attaches to. If you asked me in 2013 who I thought was going to win in 2016, I would never have said Trump. I was also like 11 years old, so. But I also don't think most people would have said Trump, even political analysts at the time. So it's hard to tell if it's going to be this strain of economic populism. Maybe AOC really rises to the top, or maybe her time is a few elections out. You could argue either way, and I would agree. Or maybe Newsom's resistance, really resistance stuff is good. Maybe Trump isn't around then. Maybe the biggest issue is something completely different. Like we really don't know. So it's hard to tell. Ideally, I want somebody who's going to hold people accountable. Yeah, I want someone who's going to use Elon Musk's corruption as a template to run, and then in that template say that we will stop that from ever happening again. We will have some sort of campaign finance reform, some sort of mechanism in place so we don't have a repeat of Trump Part 2. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, it's hard. I don't want the next Democrat to tone it up even more and be so insane that they're like going after and like saying,
Agreed.
"Hey,
You
my
don't want somebody worse than Trump.
no, I don't want them to be like saying Attorney General, future Attorney General AOC, whatever the hell. Go after this person, Attorney General Jasmine Crockett. But I want someone who is going to hold people accountable in a way that Merrick Garland seemed like he didn't.
No, listen, I totally agree. And listen, with respect to policy, that's something totally different. Newsom is not my first choice with respect to policy, and quite frankly, 4 months ago, he wasn't even my first choice with respect to rhetoric and approach because after the election, he did a bit of a 180 and was, I thought, too conciliatory towards the late Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and others on his podcast. I thought he was actually going afield. I like his more recent approach, his more recent rhetoric, because he's holding up the mirror, and I feel like that needs to be done. If we're to move forward as a society, we have to make a decision as to whether or not the Trump-style approach of politics is something that we're going to accept or something that we're going to shut down. And so I feel like President Biden's approach of trying to appeal to the elected Republican Party's better angels, that failed abysmally. He had some pretty impressive legislative accomplishments as a result of his bipartisan efforts. But in terms of changing the course or fighting for the soul of America, which is something he campaigned on, that failed abysmally. And so I feel like Newsom's approach is the only one we haven't tried, which is, hey, listen, I'm going to hold this mirror up and you tell me if you like it. If you don't like it, then maybe we should not do this, all of us together. And so I think it's important to see what happens next.
But Biden didn't really read the room well.
No.
And there's this quote from Destiny that remember that panel we were on in Michigan?
I do.
Or was it Michigan? No, or Wisconsin?
It was Wisconsin, or was it Ohio?
Oh shit, it was Ohio.
Yeah,
it was neither of the states.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were in Wisconsin together and Ohio.
We did.
So, yeah.
We did a few different panels, but he was like, man, whenever we elect a like Chihuahua as our attorney general, Republicans think it's a pit bull. Anytime it's like a Chihuahua with a D on their forehead, Republicans just see a pit bull at all times. So at this point, fuck it. We might as well elect a pit bull because Merrick Garland was so incredibly weak, yet Republicans still viewed him as somebody who was targeting everybody. And it's like, if you guys want to see a Democrat who is actually holding people accountable, Lord have mercy. Rudy Giuliani wouldn't be walking around. Half of Donald Trump's former and current cabinet wouldn't be walking around if we actually wanted to hold people accountable and not go with the Merrick Garland route. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I remember...
That was a terrible nomination. That was by far, I think, of all his nominees, Merrick Garland was just not the guy for the time. He had a judge's mentality. Remember, he was a federal judge. He was a federal prosecutor for years, then became a judge. And he had that judge's mentality of just being like super cold and dispassionate. And like, but as a prosecutor, it's an adversarial role, and he just wasn't made for it, in my opinion.
About the privately publicly thing on the CNN debate, I swear to God, it's like sometimes I can't tell if I'm going crazy or if that's what they're saying. I was like, is that what you just said there? Because he was like, we're talking about Donald Trump directly asking Pam Bondi, saying, hey, Pam, target these people. And then those people are targeting. And he's like, well, a Politico article reported that Biden was expressing frustrations in backdoor meetings or whatever. So it's like, wait a minute.
To somebody who wasn't Merrick Garland. He wasn't even bitching to Merrick Garland about it in private.
Well, Abby asked him, who was he expressing frustrations to? And Scott didn't have an answer. So it's just like, wait a minute. So he's personally frustrated, and that was leaked via Politico, and that's the same. Come on. I was going to make that point, but sometimes it's hard to really get in there.
No, you made that point. You made that point brilliantly, especially with that one-liner. Now, again, and his response was, well, Adam, he said it in private, and so he wanted it leaked, and obviously Merrick Garland's going to read the leak. So it was like, dude, fuck off. Like, miss me with that, Don't tell me these are the same. And speaking of dogs, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I get all these comments that are like, Adam, this is what you should have said in the moment. And they're things that I definitely should never say. Like, one of them was like, Adam, if I were in your spot, or no, one of them was like, Adam, you're way too soft. You should have stuck up your middle finger and said, fuck you, Scott, and walked off. And I'm like, guys, I actually want to get invited back on the show. Like, I don't want to be like a crazy liberal. That's
no, and he would want that. Because imagine what Scott would do with something like that. He'd be like, I own Gen Z's strongest lib warrior. You know what I mean? Like, you would have you triggered him. And you did what Scott says he likes to do to liberals. Remember, didn't he say at a Trump speech he has to buy a farm because he owns so many libs? It was like this weird fucking creepy ass comment where he was comparing libs to either cattle or chattel slavery, one of the two. So like that's his whole thing is he wants to own the libs. Well, you triggered him. At one point, he looked like he was about to burst into tears. I used it as the thumbnail for my video on this because he's like looking down and like sad, like fuck, this 22-year-old is just spanking me on live TV. Speaking of dog, I got to close with this. I've got 2 more questions. You got that dog in you?
I do. It's a good inside joke going. Should we let them in on the inside joke?
I mean, my audience is not Gen Z, so you will absolutely have to explain, just like you did with me, what got that dog in you means.
I don't even remember. We were at a canvassing event. You and I were risking our lives fighting for democracy, going door to door in like an Ohio, like a nice Ohio neighborhood, trying to get people registered to vote. And I don't know, we were just going back and forth, and I was explaining Gen Z memes to you, and got that dog in you is one of them where it's like, how do I even explain it? It just, it's a meme where it's like, do you have that fight in you?
Yeah.
But it's actually a photo of a dog. It's hard to describe.
No,
honestly.
listen, I think it was well put. I was over there taking notes and then talking to my eldest nephew, who's about 1 year younger than you, and he's like, "Yep, that checks out. Yep, that's right."
Yeah.
He's double checking the math. Last question: what's going on with Mockler Media and MeidasTouch? What can people expect out of Adam Mockler in the next 6 months?
Oh yeah, we're working on building out a few debate formats. I was trying to launch it in Q1 or Q2 of this year, but it's harder. It's harder than I thought it would be. And if it was easy, then someone else would have already done the show that we're trying to do. But I'm legit investing a lot of my time and resources back into a show. And this debate show is like, I've been on Pierce Morgan, I've done Jubilee and Abby Phillip, and I think that we can create our own format in the Midwest where we bring people in. We debate. Mockler Media is a broader umbrella that will host a show. We have a few contributors that we're lining up, so I'm able to work on this stuff while people contribute to my channel, like Chris, like Micah Irfan. We're trying to find some, like female voices we can add because the space is just a lot of white dudes, and I think that we need voices that are more diverse, but that's for another day. And like, we're working on it, but the talk is for another day. Right now, the debate show is our main focus. This debate show should be pretty sick. We can bring in all types of voices, and I'm excited for it. We're going to build up this clipping infrastructure, and in this clipping infrastructure, we're going to be able to fight back against what Charlie Kirk had built, what these right-wingers like Nick Fuentes are building, just clips all over, and it'll be great. And MeidasTouch always has my back. I'm still a contributor to MeidasTouch, and I will be for a while.
That's awesome, man. Again, you've had so much success. I'm so proud of you. You've just been kicking ass and taking names. Will you be hosting this debate show, or will you be our participant, or both?
Both. Yeah, I mean, it's once we have the infrastructure, the format is interchangeable. So in one episode, it could be MAGA father debates liberal daughter with me hosting, and the next one it could be Adam debates 2 Gen Z college kids. You know how much fun that would be, where it's like Mockler surrounded by 3 college kids at once, and the whole time I'm fighting an uphill battle, but I'm like, guys, we're all fighting, and we clip it up, and it's like a good, we get to create our own new IP.
Dude, that sounds awesome. Good for you, man. Listen, keep kicking ass and taking names. I appreciate all that you do, and I'm sure we'll be texting back and forth here in a bit. Good luck, and yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you on the debate show. We'll do this again.
Let's bring it on, baby. It's gonna be millennials surrounded by Gen Z slangers, and they're gonna throw some slang at me while we're debating, and I'm gonna have to like decipher and interpret it. Gonna be great.
The thumbnail's gonna be like, he has that dog in him? Question mark.
But I'm like this the whole time. Like, what's the hell?
Yeah.
What's that mean? No, I appreciate it, bro. Thank you.